Right, grade 12s, we're working with circle analytical, where you are given an equation not in standard form and you have to complete the square first. So example 7 is based on when you're given it in this sort of format and then completing the square happens. So this is just more to revise you completing the square. So it says, for example 7, determine the radius and the coordinates of the center of the circle. So in other words, just get it into that standard form that we have where it's x minus a all squared plus y minus b all squared equals r squared from this format that they've given you. Okay, so the first thing you need to do is arrange anything to do with x's together, anything to do with y's together, and kick the constant over. Okay, so you're going to rearrange x's and y's, and it says transpose the constant term to the right hand side. I just say kick it over, get that constant over. So when I do this, so I'm just going to rewrite this, I then just leave a big gap because something's going to happen in this gap for both of them, right? And what's going to happen is the completing the square. So now to complete the square, you look at what's in front of the x. Forget about the x. The x must go away. We don't like our x's. X's must go. So you look at what's in front of the x and you add that on in a bracket and you halve it and you square it. That's completing the square. Now whatever you do to one side, you have to balance it out on the other. So you add the same thing on the other side. And then we do the same thing for the y. So we look at what's in front of y. We add that. So positive 2 over 2 all squared, and then positive 2 over 2 all squared. And that's how they've gotten this. So that, and then this piece and this piece. I'm just keeping it in the brackets for my first step. So we end up getting this middle bit here. Right. So let's just fix up the right-hand side. So the right-hand side becomes 6 plus negative 3 all squared plus 1, which is 6 plus 9 plus 1, which is 16. Okay, so you sort out that side. That is your radius squared. Then this x piece gets sorted out into a trinomial, and it happens to always be a perfect square trinomial. So it means it's got to be the same binomial squared, and that is then going to give you your center value, your a value. Then the same thing happens with your y equation. It becomes a perfect square trinomial, and that gives you your b value. Now, nice hint for you. Just get a different color. This piece, that answer to that piece that you added in, is always going to be your factor within your perfect square trinomial. And that x, so without the squared, there's your factors. But it has to be the correct sign. So that's why I said to you, you've got to make sure you're using that negative. You have to see that negative, and that negative comes in there. Having a look now at here, the answer there to that piece that we added on is then your perfect square factor. Okay, and then your y squared. So that's a little hint, it always works. So your center here is positive 3 and negative 1. Remember to change the signs when you pull them out the brackets for your center, and your radius will be the square root of 16, which is 4. Right, so you complete the square in order to get it in standard form for an equation where the center is not at the origin. Now for this one, it has variables. So it says the equation of the circle is given as this. Express the radius of the circle in terms of k. So you've got to get the radius, you have to get it into standard form first. Okay, so our first step for A is standard form. So it's going to be x squared plus 2kx plus y squared minus 6y, and I'm going to kick my constant over to the other side. So group your x's, group your y's, and take the rest over. Alright, so let's start with this piece. This is the coefficient of x. So I'm going to add it in a bracket over 2, and I'm going to square it. And I'm going to do the same thing on the other side. We don't want the x is gone. Then we're going to look, what's the coefficient there of our y? It's -6, so I'm going to add -6 over 2 all squared to both sides. Let's sort out this right-hand side first. This is going to become -4 plus our 2's cancel, so it's going to be just k squared. -6 over 2 is -3 all squared is 9. So that's going to be -4 plus 9 is 5 plus k squared. That is my radius squared. Okay. Then, let's finish up the left-hand side. So this piece is a perfect square trinomial with the bracket piece as the factor. So it's going to be x plus 2's cancel k all squared. So you don't worry about the squares. You take the x and you take the answer before you square it. Plus, then in this one it's going to be a y, and then the answer to that bracket before you square it is -3. So I'm going to be left with x plus k all squared plus y minus 3 all squared equals k squared plus 5. Okay. Question A then said they want the radius of the circle in terms of k. So your radius squared is k squared plus 5. So your radius is the root of k squared plus 5. Please, you can't square it individual pieces. It's a binomial. Then for B. So for B, we have our radius is equal to k squared plus 5. But they said if the radius is 3 and k needs to be a negative number, then work out what the center of the circle is. In other words, work out k, because k is part of the center of the circle from our previous question. So x plus k all squared plus y minus 3 all squared equal to k squared plus 5. That was the equation of our circle. So we were able to see that at least we have one part of our center, but we don't have the other part. So here I'm going to square both sides to get rid of my square root. I'm going to get k squared by itself. And so here k is going to be plus or minus 2. Remember, it's not a radius, so it's representing a point of the center of the circle. It could be positive or negative. But k must be negative according to the question, therefore k is -2. So which means your equation of your circle is x minus 2 all squared plus y minus 3 all squared equals to 9. And so your center of your circle is 2 and positive 3. Okay, 2 and positive 3 with a radius of 3. Okay, so that's the variable type. So all the other questions will be like this. So for your exercise 2, you'll see all the first questions for A are all just basic, completing the square. And then all the questions for B, the question for B is using this variable type, but here they said P is going to be greater than 1. So you're obviously going to get 2 answers. Pick the one that's greater than 1. And then for C, again, here they've just missed out the constant, but that's still representing the constant because it doesn't have an x or a y. For D, also just another one with some other letters there. So you are working with some sort of simultaneous happening there, or they've actually given you the center of the circle. So you can complete the square. Now careful, this A and B is not the center of the circle A and B. It's the A and B from here. So first complete the square and then find where A and B are going to be and then use the center of the circle to subset. Okay, but that's something you must try on your own. These last 3 are the challenging ones. The equation of the circle, they've given you the diameter, so half of that's going to be the radius. So you know your radius, complete the square, and you know that you can fill in, you can equate whatever you get for your radius and you're completing the square to half of the diameter. Okay, so good luck with that. The memo has been posted up so you can compare your answers afterwards, but this is just to guide you through the examples.